this video, I'm going to be breaking down these 3 videos, and I'm going to do my best of my ability to break down the tips and tricks that went into making them fan-fucking-tastic. But without further ado, let's start with the first segment of today, and that is Strategic Showdown. Strategic Showdown is the segment of the show in which I explain a strategic thing that normally clients pay me pretty decent money for in order to add to their content, and I'm giving it to you entirely for free because I appreciate you watching this so much. And as we all know, the hook is the most important segment of any video. That being said, they don't understand the different layers that goes into making a hook extra hooky, and therefore I figured I'd remind people that there's basically 3 elements that you can do to make a hook perfect. First is the text hook, then we've got a visual hook, and then we have the audio hook. The visual hook is probably the most obvious. That is the way the camera is set up and it's filming. And so you can try and set up visual hooks in such a way that it is a unique shot. Think of a top-down shot, we've got a Dutch angle, we've got a looking up shot, you could do it with props. These are all tricks to make your hook extra hooky. You can also make use of visual aids. Let's say you're making a reference about energy, that you have cups showing the distribution of energy, right? This could be an example. Then we have an audio hook. Now, audio hook is often forgotten about. It's basically some sort of sound effect or noise, or even something like a type of music that ultimately hooks people because of the way that it catches you off guard by the noise that it makes. The sound effects is something that I think in general is barely used in editing content, and therefore things like glitches, film burns, gears, risers, impacts, these are all things which give your video an extra chance to be picked up just by the sheer sound effect that throws a person off when watching. And then finally, probably most important, is the text hook. Now, the text hook is that little text box that you sometimes see creators use on screen that ultimately gives more context to a story. A lot of the time they'll use this, especially in podcasts, but you can apply it to a vlog, pretty much any type of content, to be honest. And the aim of a text hook should be to give more context about the video, to ultimately cut away potential filler and therefore unnecessary context that needs to be given by talking, and get right down to the action with it. In my humble opinion, most of the time you should be having all 3 of these in order to really create a strong hook. We're gonna get started with the first video of today, so let's dive into it.
All it took was 3 words from the gospel to break my 5-year addiction to the great lock-in. And as a 20-year-old atheist, I started Christ-maxing for literally one reason. I lost my life. I got a confession to make. I used to be an Andrew Tate fan. Okay, I'm a cornball, but I thought I was cooking. I would set goals, then set more goals, grind more, do more, be more. Cause that's all there is to life, right? That's what I thought anyways. But there was one word, just one word that I could never catch. Self-worth. Wait, but it was around 2 years ago I had enough and cracked open this old book, and let me tell you, it changed my life. Because what this Jesus fella taught was the exact opposite of who I was. The last will be first. First will be the slave of all. Lose your life to find it. What the flip? But it's weird. Self-improvement tells us to keep hustling, prove our worth, and become first. But after 3 words, Jesus gave me the self-worth I chased for 5 years when he said, "It is finished."
Oh my God!
You see, locking in tells us to ascend, but Jesus tells us to descend, die to ourselves, lose our lives. And ironically, that is where we find life. And send this to a buddy who needs one for real.
Fucking sick. Okay, so let's try and break down bit by bit.
All it took was 3 words from the gospel to break my 5-year addiction to the great lock-in.
First of all, phenomenal hook, and especially the all it took somehow creates intrigue. And then using what I just explained, a visual aid in order to add to the hook after the first kind of attention has been gotten, and then using a match cut behind the book layer in order to aid the fact that he's talking about the Bible. Obviously having him in shot, in essence in a wide shot, understanding that he's in his room or living room or whatever this is, sets up the context so you know who's speaking, right? This is a simple filmmaking rule. You almost always want to start with a wide shot so that people understand the scope of what's happening. As with any rule, there are counter arguments to say that sometimes by starting with super close-ups you actually throw off the shot. For example, in the books that I showed last week, one of the key things that stood out was when you have a real close-up of a face, of a foot, we even had, of something random. Sometimes that actually creates more intrigue because you're like, what the fuck's going on? So it's finding the nifty balance. But in this case, you start with that and then you cut really quickly to a close-up of him showing the Bible, and you use the motion of his hand coming up. Obviously think about that when you are filming. Then we have a simple match cut and then pages of the Bible cutting through really fast between the different ones. You basically rotoscope out the hand holding the Bible in order to layer this behind it. I use a tool like Runway for that. You can use After Effects. It's kind of up to your own choosing.
To break my 5-year.
Now this is the cloning effect. I've talked about this at length, but in case you're new here, let me explain. You need a blank shot like this. Then you need to film yourself in 4 different places. One here on your phone, one sitting at your actual desk, one over here, looking on your phone. And so then what you do is, again, you rotoscope yourself out and you layer it creatively as you're walking around the room, and then you put that, slap that onto your blank page. Bob's your uncle, you have this effect.
Prediction to the great.
Now this was super smart. Using the flash kind of hides the transition better. So he's done this twice already. Here he also does it. With doing that twice within the first 4 seconds, he's kind of set the taste or the standard for the video. And so as this continues coming throughout, you're kind of used to it already and you feel like it is all in one style.
I lost my life.
This guy could be doing this intuitively, but let's talk about this angle. This is one of the things that I loved about this video in particular, is his use of angles to heighten the emotion of what he's saying. And so here when he says, I lost my life, having a top-down angle creates a similar feeling to when a parent looks down on a child, and which ultimately makes him feel small and kind of insecure. Would he have done this with a shot that is looking up, he would have created a feeling of authority. In essence, then you are the child as the camera looking towards the parent, and then it wouldn't have hit home as hard just because of the psychological effect that this angle has on you.
I got a confession to make. I used to be an Andrew Tate fan. Okay, I'm a corner.
I love the use of sound effects here to really drive that home. Obviously, Andrew Tate is is not liked by everyone. Let's leave it that way. And so having this angle, this top-down angle, kind of on a fisheye, makes you feel like everything is slightly off. Shooting it this close to his head and then adding in these voices, you really feel like you are in his head. It's these subtle details that make the difference.
Oh, but I thought I was cooking. I would set goals, then set more goals, grind more, do more, be more.
Now this is a nifty trick that I learned how to do. In essence, you see it a tiny bit here, but in essence what he's done is he's created a little rig. This type of shot is actually simpler to film than it looks, and I'm going to show you. So I've brought my trusty tripod, and what you're going to do is the following. Basically, you're going to set up your camera on here, as such, and then you need to extend the legs behind you. And you're going to get some sort of string or a tie, whatever you can find, ultimately to hold it in place. Right, so you'll need to tie it back here, and that's going to hold your camera in place. And then you're going to obviously tilt the camera in such a way that it's looking at you on a wide lens, ideally. And then you just walk around. And if you've tied it, obviously it keeps it in place. And that's how you create this shot right here. And if you enjoyed that, don't forget to subscribe. Okay, continuing with the video.
More, do more, be more, because that's all there is to life.
This is also fucking smart. So get an old video camera. These things these days, they cost like maybe 50 bucks. Use it as a frame. Like I've seen people film entire videos just in this approach. It's smart, it's different, and that's why it works.
Right? That's what I thought anyways. But there was one word, just one word that I could never catch. Self-worth. Wait, but it was around 2 years ago. I had enough. I cracked open this old book, and let me tell you, it changed my life. Because what does Jesus...
Pacing is the rate at which you can pull people through a video. And nobody likes something monotonous. Think of your boring professor reading the slides all in the same tone of voice, and there's absolutely nothing that changes between the end. It's boring as fuck! That's what it is. And so you want to bring energy and also slow it down again so that people can recover.
And let me tell you, it changed my life. Because what this Jesus fella taught was the exact opposite of who I was. The last will be first. First will be the slave alone. Lose your life to find it. What the flip? Bruh. But it's weird. Self-improvement tells us to keep hustling, prove our worth, and become...
So this is obviously the same approach to editing as the original clone clip was here that I explained. The only difference is now that the second you've rotoscoped, in this case because there's only two, you desaturate.
Worth and become first. But after 3 words, Jesus gave me the self-worth I chased for 5 years.
So how do we create this little shot here? You just cut between them. So you lay the 2 clips on top of each other, the one clip of you holding the cross, the other one of you with your fingers up, and then you do 1 frame of the fingers, 1 frame of Jesus, or well in this case 3 frames, 1 frame of your fingers, and then you just switch between them until you feel like you've sold the effect. You add a nice glitch sound effect and Bob's your uncle.
Gave me the self-worth I chased for 5 years when he said, "It is finished." Oh, you see, locking in tells us to ascend, but Jesus tells us to descend.
Judging by how high his feet are off the ground, I'd imagine this is just shot at a high frame rate and then slowed down in post. And it's just him jumping and managing to stretch himself.
To ascend, but Jesus tells us to descend, die to ourselves, lose our lives. And ironically, that is where we find life. And send this to a buddy who needs one for you.
Woo! Okay, on to video 2. Now this one is slightly different than the stuff I've broken down before because this is also definitely a trending style on socials, and I know how to make this because we make it ourselves as well. And so I figured let's try and break that down.
Everyone thinks Netflix buying Warner Bros. Means cinema is dead, but it's much worse and bigger than that. Ted Sarandos, CEO of Netflix, spent a decade calling theaters useless relics. Then this week, he bought Warner Bros. But why drop $83 billion on one of the biggest loss leaders in the industry? To understand this, you have to understand a concept called zero marginal cost distribution. Imagine 2 businesses selling water. Warner Bros. Is a bottled water company. They have to manufacture every bottle, market every bottle, and convince you to buy every bottle. If the bottle tastes bad, like Joker 2, nobody buys, and their stock crashes. That is a hit-driven model. It's high risk, high friction. Netflix? They aren't selling bottles. They are the utility company. They laid the pipes into your house. Once the pipes are there, it costs them $0 to send you more water. Warner Bros. Was stressing about box office weekends. Netflix doesn't care about weekends. They care about churn. They didn't buy Warner Bros. To make money on tickets. They bought it so their pipe never runs dry. And this is the kill shot for your industry. We are moving from an economy of selling units to an economy of bundling value. If you are still trying to sell bottles, one project, one service, one product at a time, you are competing with people who are selling subscriptions. Netflix didn't beat Warner Brothers because they had better movies. The utility company always beats the bottle seller. Because for the utility, the product isn't the water, it's the pipe.
Metro Media, they make fantastic stuff. Check their shit out, it's crazy. But how have they done it? Although there wasn't a single bit of like self-filmed footage in this is still fucking time consuming to make. Like, it takes so much time to do well. This is obviously the original shot, and you throw an invert on the nested channel, so the group of clips you have, and that will change the color. It will basically change it to black and white, or if you have colors in there, it will turn it to the exact opposite. That's why the Netflix logo, for example, is light blue here. It's why the thing that is actually black here is white in the other one, because it just switches it to the inverted. It's a neat trick if you're trying to sell a glitch effect. And so there's a lot of details to break down in this. I'm going to try my best to do the ones that I think really make the difference. And the key one we see at the beginning is a vignette layered with a blur. So there's a light shadow that you'll see here, as well as a slight blur. And what that does is it helps the viewer focus their attention on where they're supposed to look. And so ultimately, that in this case, they want you to look at the middle But if you're working in horizontal footage, or doesn't really matter in what type of footage, if you're trying to get someone to focus at the sign here, you could put over a blur layer to ultimately focus the attention to that. And then you could put a blur layer here as well to focus the attention back to me. It's a neat trick. Now, they've added a texture in this frame that actually comes back repeatedly throughout the video. And the textures is what makes your videos go from looking very flat to very dynamic or very different. And so you can tell by the like slight patchiness that these images have, little squares that are layered on top of it. That is a good, nice way, if you can only for whatever reason work with stock footage, to still give that same stock footage a feeling as if it is more than just the stock footage.
But it's much worse and bigger than that. Ted Sarandos.
Before I dive into that, it's the transition between the first shot and this shot is just more of the same, right? It's just the same invert effect that I mentioned. And then first half of it is cropped. And then the second frame, it's full screen with the invert effect. And then we bring in the next frame on the similar inverted effect. And then we're continuing on the style from the beginning. And ultimately what we've done in these first 2 seconds is establish the tone for the rest of the video.
Dead, but it's much worse and bigger than that. Ted Sarandos, CEO of Netflix.
Something else that you should think about is motion. Where does motion naturally flow? So the simple animation here of the guy zooming in, naturally we know that this translates to a zoom in the middle.
Than that. Ted Sarandos, CEO of Netflix, spent a decade calling.
Something else that he brings back repeatedly is the grid. Now the grid gives this depth, basically. And so you can find these grids online, you can find them on Canva really easily. You add the same textured overlay that come back in these photos that I repeatedly talked about, and then you drag them onto here and you're just putting an opacity with a feather around the grid so that the white background shines through, rather than just kind of slapping it on without any editing to it. It's a little bit dependent upon what you like or what you prefer. It's a style thing.
Theaters, useless relics. Then this week, he bought Warner Brothers. But why drop 80?
The sound effects that he uses every time
He bought Warner
a glitch appears is what helps you through this video.
Brothers. But why drop $83 billion on one of the biggest loss leaders?
So fucking sick. You need 2 layers. Top layer is saturated. The bottom layer is the one with the original color. That in this case has the yellow. Then you basically get an opacity mask and you track the person that you want with the color. And obviously if there's a lot of movement in it, which in this case there isn't too much, you need to track the movement of that color. You need to create the keyframes that help the mask stay in place. That is one way to do it, and you can definitely rotoscope the individual with the color and add that on top of the layer instead.
If you are still trying to sell bottles, one project, one service, one product.
In order to do this well, basically you need to be very creative with the type of B-roll that you pick. There's a massive trend at the moment that you choose carefully picked movie shots. Now, why do we pick movie shots? Quite simply because it's the most recognizable. And so when people see someone like Keanu Reeves, someone like The Wolf of Wall Street, Leonardo DiCaprio, obviously, people are more likely to associate it with it because it's familiar to them and therefore they know who it is. Now, at the beginning of this, it wasn't necessarily done too much, but here we use Will Smith, super recognizable, the Joker, super recognizable, Brad Pitt from the Formula One movie, super recognizable, and sometimes that's an easier way to hook people because they simply know who it is. But other than that, the main things that come back here are the textures in the video, fantastic use of typography and using a grid as a means to make it aesthetically pleasing, smart use of film shots, and a glitch. And with that being said, it's time for Hooks of the Week. So the idea behind this segment of the show is basically to give you 3 different hooks at rapid pace to help you inspire you on a way that you could shoot your hooks differently. So in the next minute or so, I'm going to show you 3 hooks which you should try and implement in your videos. So let's go. First idea, which is a top-down shot.
See how I use colors here? I could have used.
Film yourself lying down in the grass on your bed or whatever the fuck you like. Try and figure out which color combinations work well together when you're editing it. And I thought this was sick and eye-catching, so try it. Hook 2, the dual phone split. I'll admit, to do this one, you need a bit of coordinating and have to kind of think it out, but you know, it was different. And so your chances of people watching it are much higher. And that leads us to the final hook of today, hook 3. The hook to me here was simply adding some sort of computer or UI interface on top to ultimately capture attention. Now this depends upon what vibe you're trying to sell. I mean, if you're trying to do something very chill and laid back, if it's a little bit of like, come spend the day with me as a white girl going to Starbucks, I don't know, then something like this might be very cool. Woo! Okay, we're gonna round off with the last video of today. And this one, let's go.
Not to brag, but I was great at everything in school, which is a feeling I carried with me to college, where I first realized I'm actually just really good at following tutorials. Like, really good. And this gave me what I call the euphoidence, the confidube, and this gave me what I call the YTIC disease, YouTube-induced confidence. It's the one where you think you can repair your TV or fix your bike at home by just watching a single video. But I'm glad because this gives people the freedom to be more creative and go that extra mile to make something they love even better. It can be a simple 3 steps, but it's such a clear indication of the person's love for their art.
I've broken down one of the videos of this guy before, and he's just phenomenal on what he does. So first of all, the ball effect. These are 2 shots layered on top of each other, and actually the fact that he crops the shot is what makes this feel more 3D. The ball here, which can be done in 2 ways. I know that I've seen a lot of people do this with AI, whereby they just have sort of prompt like, give me a 3D spinning tennis ball. There's also some people who film the ball themselves by having the ball on a string and then rotating, and then they film as it rotates and then basically take the string out and have it on a green screen. You throw the ball up and then you can kind of see this point is when it switches to the different ball. It's only when you break it down like this that you notice that, by the way, otherwise it's impossible to see. Then we have the sticker of the guy followed by smart match cuts. So what this guy is phenomenal at is kind of dragging you through the video. And it started with a tennis ball, and then he gets the tennis ball back and he brings the tennis ball here, and he brings you to the next prop, and which in this case is the, I guess, Nerf gun, which you see for like half a second, but it's long enough for your eyes and the fact that his hands go towards it to pick up the fact that we now have the Nerf gun in the hand, even though you don't actually see him pick it up. And so he loads it, and then here he's using now the dart from the Nerf gun to redirect your attention to somewhere else. As the Nerf dart sticks there, this I imagine is just a font found from somewhere, and then the overlay setting has been added to it to kind of get that shine effect through of the roof. That would be my assumption. In this segment, there's just a bunch of other screen recordings that he's placed nicely, which ultimately makes it feel like he has multiple screens that he's looking at. Somehow it makes his life feel more chaotic. So how do you do this? I know for a fact because I've done it myself before. There are, if you YouTube cracked screen, green screens, you'll find effects whereby the screen breaks. You just have to layer it on top smartly. Use Ultra key, select the green screen, and then you have a cracked screen, probably as I've done right now. Also, the small details of changing the light here every time. This is a genius way to make a simple shot look even more interesting. And that is just with every couple of frames, change the background light and then change it again. Change it again. And these kind of lights you can find for really cheap on Amazon. They're just called RGB lights, and you can get a whole bunch of different colors in them, and you honestly don't need a crazy expensive light in order to sell this well.
Freedom to be more creative, go that extra mile to make something they love even better. It can be as simple.
Dude, I remain a massive fan and forever inspired by your content. It looks fucking sick. And with that being said, we've come to the end of this episode once again. If you in fact did learn something new about content, let me know what. And if you enjoyed this video today, consider subscribing because it honestly helps more than you know. It keeps me motivated and inspired to push this YouTube channel further. I will be around in 2026 trying to continue my streak of posting every week because I just fucking love what it is that I do. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one. Adios.